I've had this dialogue 1,000 times over with clients and others in various settings over the course of the years, precisely because we have been fed a very static and one-dimensional model of the self. Beyond static or one-dimensional, people have fused their identities. John Vervaeke used the term confused, as in fused together, and that's how a lot of people form their co-identifications, especially the more dominant a state, a trait, or a skill is. It makes them highly dependent on that one thing, so much so the construct clings to it like a lifeline. So this tends to come with a certain rigidity. The framework will dig into all of this deeply. For this dialogue, Aporos, one who is at a loss or in doubt, represents the pattern of the psychology that I notice of this confusing of identities. Faistos, ancient Greek for light-bearer, represents the guide who helps untangle the psychological knot, pulling on threads, presenting them, and analyzing them. This is the primary theme, not just through the dialogue, but also throughout this framework. I've intentionally written this in the style of Platonic Socratic dialogue, primarily because it's a certain art I'd like to aspire to master, and I enjoy the expression thereof. As such, expect a mix of how language was used in those dialogues with a modern twist or intervention.
My dear Aporos, how goes it? I heard from a mutual acquaintance that you were trying to change some habits. How would you describe your headway into this?
Dear Faistos, you find me filled with trepidation, as I confess I have not had much success with my endeavor. It seems like the roots of the past secure me too strongly, and that the road my vices have paved is far too easy to travel, where the path of change to higher aims is a winding path of a mountain, at the foot of which fills me with apprehension for the trials ahead. Truth be told, I don't think I'm cut from the same cloth of Sisyphus, nor of any cloth that could complete such a Herculean task.
This sounds like a grave case to make against oneself.
Well, this is just how I am.
Is it?
What do you mean?
You say this of yourself as a very defined and constrained identity, in a particular set of circumstances, talking about a singular trait in you that is dominant, as if it is the whole of your identity. So, is this trait all there is to you? Surely that can't be all.
Well, clearly, I am like this, because I do this all the time.
Do you do this every time, or only in certain circumstances? And if I come to find you in the winter, would your path and or mannerism of walking be different than when I find you in the summer?
I suppose.
If I were to find you taken with illness, perhaps even bedridden, would you claim yourself lesser of a man because you have fallen ill and can't perform the feats you would otherwise perform? What if one of our Olympic athletes falls ill, but laments he could not perform in daily life as he did at the Olympics? Would he expect him to perform the same in illness as in health?
Why would he not think himself lesser when he is in that ill-fallen state?
Only if he were to only think of himself as a performer. And if he did, surely we would comfort him and say, our most respected and adorned Olympic athlete, truly you are a master of your craft. Are you surprised to find your knees weak when your stomach refuses to hold down food, and to get out of bed feels like a more heroic challenge than the biggest man you have wrestled and submitted? He would probably answer us, I have thrown and mastered mighty men, but even now I am not master of my body. This is a weakness. Always full of bravado, these athletes regardless. Shall we not talk some sense into him? Something like this. Surely this illness is not easily thrown, nor mastered by the strength of your muscles. Rather, it is rest that is needed, and your willpower would be better served to aid resting rather than straining. The athlete knows how to hold on when an opponent tries to buck him, so we must maintain our grip. Follow me then. But wouldn't this make me less of a champion? So how should we go about settling this? Perhaps it goes something like this, my dear Olympic champion. Heralds and poets sing praises of you all across the empire for your feats in the arena. None of your competitors claims to be your better. Do you really suppose they consider this to be a competitor to your legacy? Did you not throw Zelion, and did you not submit Lycanos? Has falling ill stripped you of your title? Surely not. How could it strip you from your achievements? And furthermore, how would it make you less of who you are? So pray tell, it was you who did all of this, no? Do you suppose he would make a case against this?
Perhaps you have a point, but I'm no Olympic athlete.
My dear fellow, nor does one expect Olympic efforts from you. But the very nature you so quickly grasp to have no semblance of this identity is part of the problem.
How do you figure?
You quickly reach for this statement that you are no equal to Sisyphus, Hercules, and our much-adorned Olympic athlete, without ever exploring whether or not those capacities are there to build the ability or to what level it could be built. Hercules wasn't born defeating mighty beasts, and our Olympic athlete wasn't born submitting opponents. A capacity encapsulates the biological factors that make the fundamental premise to execute a particular ability. Legs provide the capacity to walk. One step deeper. The tissues, bone, muscle, tendon, cells, form the capacity for the legs to execute its ability to walk. If I were denied legs, we would hardly argue against my capacity to walk. If you possess hands, you possess the physical requirement, and thus capacity to be a potter. If you possess an inkling of temperance and self-discipline, you possess the capacity to be a self-disciplined man. Very rarely can we fault the capacity for our shortcomings. Rather, it is a lack of practice and thus a waned ability which is faulty. As such, you hastily deem that you are lacking in certain capacities, where surely you have given up before you exercised the seedling of your ability. This is exactly where the co-identification and self-limiting belief become self-defeating and express themselves as self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't think of yourself as such, and thus act in accordance with that belief without truly testing it. I agree, my friend. We are playing with a paradox, for how does one behave other than one believes? Therefore, we must first confront these beliefs and co-identifications we have about ourselves.
This is quite the show, dear Faistos, though I'm unsure of how I'm supposed to venture to believe that I am other than I think I am. Did you not just proclaim that one does not behave other than one believes himself to be? Then how do you suppose I confront a belief or co-identification I have when I don't believe I can change it?
I see your earnest concerns written on your face. Let's take up arms, if the gods are willing, against these concerns, and allow me to elaborate through further illustration. So, if you are willing, follow me now.
By all means, lead, and I will follow.
Is a potter still a potter if he isn't making pots? That is, if a master craftsman of pottery dedicated his entire life to making pots, finds himself asleep, resting, walking, on vacation, or otherwise denied access to his craft, does it make him less of a potter? Similarly, we must ask, is a father still a father when his child is absent? You'd say yes. And if, heavens forbid, his child had passed, surely he might no longer have his child present. But does it make him any less of a father? Do you see my meaning? There is more in terms of identity that is able to persist when it merges with our very being and soul. A master potter has no mere theories about pottery. He has lived the craft and made pots with his hands, as if each pot is etched into them. Even more so for a father. He has grown beyond mere propositions about fatherhood when he has raised his children. The experience weaves itself into us through the changes in biology, from tissue to cell to gene. You have been altered. With it, the identity has changed and formed. We could easily validate these identities. Now this function is present regardless of behavior, meaning if I lived my life as a degenerate and now sought to change my ways, surely this behavior is deeply intertwined with my identity. Perhaps God and the gods will grant you some type of favor to find your way to virtue. Regardless, even if they decided you as a sinner were not worth the time, they have granted you the gifts of your capacities to change your behavior for the better. As such, if you find too big an obstacle between your desired behaviors and your current identity, then we should confront this identity. Are you really this man, so cursed with no capacity for betterment and change, that you have never once acted in your best interest with an inkling towards virtue? The challenge, then, or confrontation, is mainly found in this questioning of the identity and behaviors. Surely, if nothing else, you retain the ability to ask yourself questions.
I suppose I do retain this ability. However, surely just asking myself some questions won't make me a better man.
You are doing great honors to your name, my friend. Only asking yourself questions won't make you a better man, nor was it the intention or goal of the exploration. These questions are the first step in having you attempt to climb this seemingly unconquerable and monstrous mountain of changing your habits. The questions are our first weapons and tools to attempt to combat, pry, and free ourselves from those co-identifications that keep us from scaling that mountain we know deep down inside we have to scale. There is no substitute for climbing this mountain, as this is the experience through action that affords us to become the one who has scaled the mountain of changing himself for the better by getting rid of his vices.
So then what questions do I ask myself? Should I attempt to scale this treacherous mountain of vice that has for so long overshadowed whatever inkling of virtue still resides in me?
Exactly where we started our conversation, if you remember how you initiated the dialogue. You stated you were not equal to this Sisyphean task of overcoming your vice. So now ask yourself, and reflect on this deeply, if this is really the case, if you are as such, or only think of yourself as such, and if there are no other hidden capacities that have yet to see the light of day. For if you never invoke the name of the gods and their mercy, how will you ever find out what gifts they have bestowed upon you in terms of a capacity for virtue? Find your courage, my friend, and take up arms against, now that we have given you these weapons, to fight off these beliefs and identities that keep you as nailed to the ground before your intended scale of the summit.